All right, let's dive into one of the most radical, ambitious, and just out there futuristic architectural movements of the 20th century, Japanese metabolism. This was a vision of cities that could literally live, grow, and change like an organism, and it was born from a moment of unbelievable crisis and reinvention. So check this out. This is, or well was, the Nagagin Capsule Tower in Tokyo. This building was the absolute poster child for metabolism. Built in 1972, it was a vision of a plug-in future. You see, each one of those little pods was a self-contained apartment, and the crazy part is, they were designed to be replaced every 25 years. It wasn't really a static building, it was more like a giant framework for life, ready to adapt to whatever came next.
So here's the big question, right? If this incredible building was a prophecy of the future, a masterpiece designed for change, why was it torn down just a couple of years ago? To figure that out, we have to go back in time, back to the world that dreamed this thing up in the first place.
To really get metabolism, you have to understand the literal ashes from which it rose. This was a time when imagining new buildings wasn't just about architecture. It was about imagining a whole new future for a nation that was basically starting from zero.
I mean, just try to wrap your head around the sheer scale of the challenges Japan was facing in the 1950s. You have entire cities just vaporized by war, you have a massive population boom with everyone flooding into the cities, and on top of all that, you've got this geography where almost 3/4 of the country is mountains, and you're constantly under threat from earthquakes and tsunamis. This wasn't just one problem, it was a crisis on every single front.
And that reinvention arrived in 1960. It came from a group of young, visionary architects who had this revolutionary idea. What if a city wasn't just a static pile of concrete and steel? What if a city could be alive?
The stage was set at the 1960 World Design Conference in Tokyo. Now, this was a huge deal, the first event of its kind in Japan, a chance for the country to show its new face to the world. And a group of young architects, mentored by the great Kenzo Tange, they grabbed the moment. They called themselves the Metabolists.
The name, metabolism, is pretty much the whole idea in one word. You know, metabolism is the biological process of life, of constant change, breakdown, and renewal. Well, these architects argued our cities should do the exact same thing. They should be designed to grow, to adapt, to shed old parts and grow new ones, just like your own body.
They put all these radical ideas down on paper in this document, a manifesto called Metabolism 1960, The Proposals for New Urbanism. It was packed with essays and these absolutely mind-bending designs that basically declared war on the whole idea of a permanent, unchanging city.
Okay, so what was actually in this manifesto? Let's break it down. First, they said you have to see society itself as a living, continuous process. Second, and this is the real game changer, you separate the city into two parts, a permanent, long-lasting infrastructure, and then short-lived, replaceable units that just plug into it. Third, you use technology not to build things that last forever, but to make them super easy to change. And finally, you have to think big. Don't just design one building, design the entire city as one giant, dynamic system.
So, what does a philosophy like that actually look like in practice? Well, get ready, because the proposals they came up with were absolutely wild. They range from the tiniest individual cells to colossal cities floating on the ocean.
This is the secret sauce of metabolism right here. Think of a giant tree. You've got the permanent megastructure, that's the trunk, and the branches. It holds all the core services, the transportation, everything. It's built to last for centuries. Then you have the individual replaceable elements, the leaves. These are the apartments, the offices, the houses. They have a short lifespan, and you can just plug them in or unplug them whenever you need to.
And their ambition? It was just off the charts. They didn't just propose new buildings, they proposed whole new territories for people to live. Kiyonori Kikutake designed these incredible floating marine cities to live on the sea. Arata Isozaki imagined a city in the air, literally building a new city suspended over the old one. And Kenzo Tange, he proposed a massive urban structure stretching right across Tokyo Bay. They were trying to solve Japan's land problem by building on the water and in the sky.
But, you know, even when a metabolist project actually got built, reality had a way of stepping in. And this slide shows that gap perfectly. On the left, you've got this breathtaking sci-fi dream for Aquapolis, a floating city pavilion. And on the right, well, that's the much simpler, scaled-back version that actually got built. The utopian dream often had to make some pretty big compromises with money and technology. Which brings us to the final, critical question. With so many of these amazing dreams left unbuilt, and with its most famous icon now gone, what is the real legacy of metabolism? Was it all just a fascinating failure, or is it a vision that still has something to teach us today?
So let's circle all the way back to the beginning. Looking at the Nagagan Tower, now just a memory, is it fair to call this whole movement a failure?
Well, the verdict is complicated. You can look at this in two ways. On the one hand, yeah, you could say it failed. The projects were often utopian fantasies that ignored how money works. They definitely produced way more drawings than actual buildings. And the biggest point against them, at the Nagagan Tower, not a single capsule was ever replaced like they planned. But on the other hand, its influence is absolutely undeniable. Metabolism completely changed how architects think about cities, not as static objects but as living, evolving systems. Its ideas inspire designers all over the world and are totally alive today in things like modular housing and even new plans for floating cities. And here's the beautiful, ironic twist. Even as it was being torn down, the Nagagan Tower proved the whole metabolist point. The capsules were designed to be detachable and movable. And guess what? Today, 23 of them have been saved, preserved, and moved to museums and new spots. In the end, the building is gone, but the core idea of mobile, adaptable architecture actually outlived it.
The great architectural historian Kenneth Frampton had this quote that just nails it. He called metabolism the last gasp of the heroic phase of modern architecture. It was both the grand finale to an era of big, utopian thinking, and at the same time, a powerful signpost pointing toward the future. It pushed the limits, and it left us with not so much a legacy of buildings, but a legacy of powerful, provocative questions about what our cities can be.
This explainer was curated by Professor Laura Hernandez Arize for her contemporary architecture class at the IEST. We hope this has given you a clear picture of this absolutely fascinating moment in architectural history.